Came across this political cartoon in the Free Thinker, and it expresses uh, some of the frustrations of what parents have about education today and why education is on the ballot for 2024. So many parents and grandparents and people who have children in school are frustrated, kind of wondering why this wokism has entered the classroom, why it's so prominent. Why is social activism being pushed to the forefront above math, reading, and writing, especially when our scores are so low and we're spending something like $24,000 on a student per student to be educated, and we're not seeing the results for it? Why are we making this issue the number one issue, and why aren't we getting back to the basics and helping our children to read? Well, in this episode, I would like you to take a seat with me at the round table so that we can discuss why a philosophy of education is so. All right. As I discussed before, um, philosophy of education is a vital part to understanding what's going on right now in the current situation and what to be looking for inside of a school for your children. Because, as I'm going to point out to you, from philosophy comes practice, and from philosophy and practice comes culture. And if these three are breaking down, then the culture is breaking down. And I think that's what we're seeing right now in many of our public institutions, like the universities and the public schools, is that we're seeing a breakdown of the fundamental education because it's coming from a flawed philosophy. And so, to kind of get to understanding why this is taking place, why are we seeing um, wokeism inside the classroom? Why are we seeing this value of social activism inside the classroom above, say, math, reading, writing, and things of that nature? We have to kind of trace back to um, the, the philosophy of education is being taught. All the things you see in this cartoon, which is I got it from the Free Thinker. Um, uh, Cops are racist, transgender rights in sports, whites are oppressors, why the USA sucks, do Friday. And the kid's response, but shouldn't you teach us how to read and write first? Um, this this is kind of a picture of what's going on across the nation. I remember reading once an article of a young African American man in Chicago who was seeing things being taught, such as social activism, inside the classroom. And he said that the irony of this whole thing is that you asked me to hold this sign that I can't even read. So you want me to be a social activist and to talk about all these issues that are going on inside of my community, but I can't even read the sign and barely write the sign. And so this is a real thing. This is a real problem. This is not something that's just kind of out there. And because of it's part of the public system, it's going to make its way down to rural communities like ours in here in Litchfield. And so, where does all this come from? Like, what is the kind of the root cause? What is kind of the philosophy that's being put out there? And I'll tell you, as a public school teacher, I could not have spoken these words to you. I could not have articulated a philosophy to you, but I can tell you what was taught. So, an educational philosophy, in my own words, are simply a set of beliefs and attitudes that influence and dictate the aims and methods of directed learning. Directed learning is essentially what education is. There's many components to education when you start looking into training and things like that. But keep in mind, the philosophy, this word philosophy means a love of wisdom, but when it's used practically or technically, it's a set of beliefs. It's your core convictions, and those core convictions develop your attitudes, and your attitude influence how you're going to dictate the aims, the goals, the scope and sequence of your education, and then the methods that you're going to practice. And all of this is going to be worked out inside of your curriculum, inside of your classroom management, inside of your expectations and the role and nature of a teacher and the role and nature of a student. And so these beliefs and attitudes are really important to the school and to the teacher. And you need to know kind of what with. So current um, educational philosophy, like why it's important, like I said before, philosophy affects practice. If your philosophy is wrong, your practice is going to be wrong. If your philosophy and practice are wrong, it's going to affect your culture. Okay, and so here's what we're seeing. I think from some of the things inside of the public institutions, whether you're at university or you're now in the public school, is you're seeing a philosophy producing a methodology that's not working. Hence, our scores are so low. Our children are not reading and they're not writing. They're not doing math. They're struggling in just about every area of education, and I think we're the highest spenders when it comes to education in the Western world, and yet our students are somewhere in the 40s or 50s, and we're just continuing to drop when it comes to ranking. And so what seems to be the prevalent philosophy? Uh, well, you got to go all the way back to university, and really, I think something that started an idea that started somewhere around the late 19 maybe 1917, 1918, 1920s, somewhere around there. It's just after the First War. Uh, some professors from Germany start to make their way over into the universities, and they begin to teach this idea called postmodernism. And the bedrock of postmodern educational philosophy includes several concepts. And so it's impossible, first of all, to determine objective truth. Postmodernism says there is no such thing as absolute truth, and you cannot determine objective truth. Secondly, language does not put us in contact with reality, which means words can mean whatever I want them to mean. And you hear this kind of expressed, and well, use your truth and my truth is my truth. Or if I'm reading a document that somebody wrote several years ago, I can interpret that language how I want to, not with the intent that they constructed, right? Because thirdly, language and meaning are socially constructed. So however I decide to interpret it is how it's going to mean to me. And so when you start to look at meta narratives, when you start to look at how we interpret life and how we interpret our social constructs, right? Meta narratives are nothing but social constructs, and they're developed by dominant groups to legitimize their position and their privileges, which is why you're hearing things like white privilege, or I just read an article today on Fox News, two-parent privilege, right? um, if you grow up in a two-parent home, you're privileged. That's a postmodern thought. That's a postmodern idea. Social constructions. That's a big thing that's being talked about. Knowledge is power. I don't know how many times I was taught that in all the schools growing up. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And schools have traditionally functioned as these agents of that power. Okay. And inside of the school system, you can use that power for social control and manipulation of knowledge. So that's modernism. And so it started inside the university. It's been taught to our teachers. It's been taught to our educators, and that has now trickled into other theories. And so The dominant theory that I think is out there is the progressive educational theory. And so progressive educational theory is not always entirely linked to, say, progressivism politically, but there are some components there. And so at the very buck of the philosophy of education inside the public system right now is postmodernism. So that's your first block. On top of that, I think progressive educational theory had a really tremendous influence on America when it was pretty dominant back in the, oh, I want to say the 30s and 40s, before humanism jumped in there. So there's some major assumptions you need to understand about progressive educational theory. First of all, they have this ascent. Children have a natural desire to learn about their environment. Therefore, a child's interest is the natural starting point for education. Now, I know on the surface, you look at that and will say, yeah, because children are curious. And if children are curious, then that makes perfect sense. This gets turned into a funny way. Of course, children are curious. And of course, most children want to kind of figure some things out. The key component to this, though, is therefore, a child's interest is the natural starting point. And this is where I start to get shaky with the theory. Okay. There are five core principles to progressivism. Okay. Students are active rather than passive. Amen. I would pretty uh, much agree with that. I think that active learning is inside the heart of every child. Number two, a teacher's role is a facilitator, a guide, an advisor, a fellow traveler on the path of education. And so, if that's the case, that means your teacher is no longer the authority inside the classroom. A facilitator is someone who just kind of sits on the side and makes sure things head a good direction. A guide, an advisor, a fellow traveler. They're not the wise sage. They're not the authoritarian or the discipline or where you want to be inside the classroom. They're kind of almost at equal, even though I would say, practically speaking, most classrooms don't see the teacher as equal, but they're kind of taught to be the guide. Number three, school is a microcosm of the larger society. And so what's happening outside in the world should be brought inside the classroom for the classroom to pick apart and to emulate and to do. So you're starting to see postmodernism is putting its little claws inside of progressivism. Classroom activities should focus on problem solving rather than artificial methods of teaching a subject matter. I go back and forth with this because on the one hand, I do believe problem solving is important. I think you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and get rid of artificial methods of teaching subject matter or traditional methods of teaching subject matter. Fifthly, the social atmosphere of the schools should be social and democratic. And so essentially now you have the world coming inside the classroom, and how we run the world is how the classroom should be run. That's kind of your core convictions of progressivism. I don't think are all bad, okay? But I do think some of the principles lend themselves to some real problems because they're coming from the root of postmodernism, particularly the teacher's role as facilitator, particularly the school as a microcosm of larger society, um, particularly the social atmosphere of the school should be social and democratic. I think those three components lend itself to some real issues that we're seeing culturally inside the school system. So some of the problems with this theory is one, it attaches itself really, really well to humanism. And humanism is simply just science's attempt to try to create a morality because atheism can't account for morality any other way. Morality typically comes through religion, through a higher power. So in Christianity, our morality comes from God, the one true God, right? Who gave us his authoritative word and his fully sufficient word to teach us how to thrive, how to flourish, and how to live according to his way. And there are certain morals we follow. Evolution has never been able to account for this. They can't account for reason, the way we think, and they account for morality. So humanism has to be this thing where humans are the apex, and from human to the fact that we're just mere human, we should be good humans and good people. But Problem with that is we don't know exactly what that means inside of any cultural context, because what it means for one culture can be something different for another culture. Postmodernism, you get rid of all objective truth, you get rid of all absolute truth, and you're left with humanism. Secondly, progressive theory, the next building block. So if you have postmodernism on the bottom and you have progressive theory next, Reconstructionism is something I think that it's really playing itself out right now in a lot of our issues inside of um, a public school. And this began to come after World War II. This was more in the 50s and 60s. You began to see these components, right? So the building blocks of Reconstructionism are world society is in a state of crisis, and civilization as we know it will come to an end unless current practices are reversed. Okay, now you got to keep this in mind because that's kind of what we're seeing right now. We're turning everything on its head. And the only effective solution to world problems is the creation of a kind of a social order, a planetary, a globalism, if you will. Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or our government, progressive liberalism as a political ideology is all shooting for globalism. Thirdly, formal education can be a major agent of the reconstruction of social order. Okay. Fourthly, teaching methods must be based upon democratic principles that rely upon the native intents of the majority to recognize and act upon the most valid solution to the world's problems. And so whatever and I'll just go on. The fifth one is if formal education is to be a part of the social solution in the present world crisis, it must be actively teach social change. Okay, so this is what we're seeing worked out right now. Why is the that political cartoon that we looked at the very beginning? Why are those components actually inside the room? Because this is how education is being taught, and it's from a philosophy and a methodology that says that the classroom is the agent for social change, and that education is the agent for social change. That we can we can reconstruct our society through the classroom. And if the world is meant to be inside the classroom, and the classroom is a microcosm of the world, then all of these social issues that we're seeing belong inside the classroom. And you're starting to see why it's there. And the public system has embraced this philosophy, and it's embraced this ideology. And this is where the social issues come from. And this is why that political cartoon is actually a reality for so many classrooms inside of America today, is because postmodernism, progressive theory, and Reconstructionism are exactly the philosophy that's being played out. And to be fair, it's your teachers may not be completely aware of it or buying into it. When I was a teacher, I couldn't tell you that I was a postmodernist or I was thinking this way. I can just tell you that the administration was pushing a lot of these ideas. So the reality is, even though some of your teachers may not be thinking this way, the system has bought into this, and the system is going to push this down the line, and it's eventually going to find its way, if it's not already here, to your small community school system. And there are some of your teachers who are drinking the Kool-Aid and they're completely bought in, and there are others who are stuck between a rock and a hard place and are trying to work it out. So just kind of a small recap why philosophy matters, right? Philosophy matters because philosophy affects practice. Practice is going to affect culture. So why you're seeing wokism inside the classroom, or why you're seeing these social issues take the center stage, is because postmodernism has gotten rid of a lot of the values and the virtues and the truths that we grew up believing and embracing and holding dearly. Progressive theory has opened the doors with this child centeredness, and seeing the classroom as a microcosm of the world to allow these ideologies to take root and have a place. And Reconstructionism is pretty much the plan to get it all done. And this buy-in to kind of globalism, and this kind of worldlyism, if you will, inside the classroom has just given the green light, and so you're going to see more of it. This is not going away. This is pretty much the meat and potatoes of what you're going to see, which is why when you watch these school board meetings, and you're just wondering how these people staying inside of the staying in these seats, and how are these schools getting away with it, because it is deeply rooted. It's deeply rooted. It's deeply rooted in your school boards and your administrators. Even inside of um, and even oddly enough, in some of your churches. So this is not an idea that's going away. This is something that you're going to have to contend with. Now, if you're a progressive liberal, I mean, this is right up your alley, and you're going to completely buy into this, and it's going to be great. But if you have a conservative leaning, say politically, uh, or even religiously, this is going to rub you the wrong way, and you're going to see that this value system is not lining up with your value system. So, what is our response? And I need to be again clear. I'm not against the Litchfield school district by any means, and I'm not advocating that all of the issues that I'm talking about are front and center inside of Litchfield. Um, like I said, this is part of the public system, so it's going to make its way down, and you see it. You're going to see it when they have to start, making you know uh, bathrooms for people identified as trans, or you start seeing the LGBT agenda being pushed inside the school, or things like that. I mean, you're going to see it. That's just going to happen, and so you need to start thinking about what options do I have if I don't necessarily buy into this philosophy of education, or I'm afraid that my child is going to get the education they need. Well, by the grace of God, we live in a country that allows us to have options, um, that we can constitutionally create other means of education. Uh, and Litchfield has already done this, right? You have Zion Lutheran School that is been here for a long time, doing a fine job of educating students here. When they started, they had their reasons for what they wanted to do, and had the freedom to do it. And so, in the same kind of vein, First Baptist Church of Litchfield is wanting to provide another option for parents to think about a philosophy that might be a little more holistic and a little more effective, I think, in reaching their child, not just educationally, but I think emotionally and spiritually. Because, like I said, if philosophy is wrong, practice is wrong. Practice is wrong, culture is wrong. And I think some of the things you're seeing inside of the public school system that may give you a little bit of angst is that the methodology is not working. Common Core is not a very good curriculum. I think that's kind of been established right now, especially with all the amount of money that's been poured into it and the amount of resources that's been given to it. Our students are still failing, and not doing very well. So the curriculum itself has got some trouble. The methodology of teaching, this idea that you can't use traditional practices, or you shouldn't use traditional practices, um, that seems odd to me, because there's so much in favor of these kind of new modern practices. So supposedly the research backs it up, and yet again, the numbers just aren't working. And then experience has proven the same thing. In our own community, our students are struggling uh, to do well in math and reading and science. So we know that the methodology is not working and the curriculum is not working, because the number the amount of students being successful is not working either. Now, again, to be fair, that's not all on the public school system or the teacher. There are family dynamics that are happening. There's poverty that's happening. There's substance abuse issues that are happening. And then there's also impaired learning things that are happening. I'm just advocating or saying that the system itself is not helping either of those issues. You're also seeing a cultural problem inside the school where kids are given to this, it's child centered. The teachers are not being supported. There's not a lot of authority inside the classroom, and there's kind of a catering to agendas and a catering to these people with the loudest voices right now, who are pushing these agendas inside of the school system. And you also have bullying on the rise, and you have these sexual assaults on the rise inside the school system. And so somewhere there's a breakdown also culturally. Okay, putting that aside, what are your options? What can you do? Well, I think what we're going to do, where we're going to be helpful to you as a school, is we do not buy into postmodernism. We are not progressive in our educational theory, and we're not falling in line with Reconstructionism. We're actually going back to something that's been proven over time. Ecclesiastical perennialism is would be our educational philosophy. Um, and so a lot of the stuff I've been pulling from is from George Knight's educational resource. And I have the site here on my slides that you can see and that you can read his stuff if you want. But he talks about ecclesiastical perennialism. Ecclesiastical is the church, right? Faith, it's Christianity. Perennialism just kind of means forever, things that have gone lasted forever, or that have a long term endurability. He advocates a return to the roots and the focus on time honored ideas of human culture. So perennialism looks back and says, look, what has worked over time? Let's use that. What has been the stories and the literature that's lasted over time? Let's read those kind of things. What's been the language that's lasted over time? Let's study that. Let's study the math, the computations. These ideas that have proven valid and useful by having withstood the test of time. Uh, so perennialism, the importance of faith, mind, reason, and the great works of intellectual past. And so this is not a new concept. This is not a new thing. We're simply doing what's been done in the past, and this has worked. And there are core convictions to perennialism that I think that are super important. That they're the counter, I guess, to progressive theory. First of all, God has made human beings as His image bearers. We are spiritual beings, which means that faith is super important. Believing in Him, knowing Him, and knowing that you're made in His image. That's what gives you dignity. That's what gives you purpose. That's what gives you value. Is what He has said and what He has made. God has also given you a brain. He's given you the ability to think and to have reason. One of the things you don't see inside of evolution is this understanding of where reason and logic came from. You don't see animals in the jungle or the forest creating things like Taj Mahal or writing symphonies or putting together therapy sessions for complex feelings and emotions. It's just not there because they don't have the same ability to reason, the same ability to think. Uh, Wisdom is also a value inside of ecclesiastical perennialism. Wisdom and the way we look at it is biblical wisdom. And there's four components to that. First of all, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Again, going back to faith, you need to know where you came from, who made you, and why you're here. So the fear of God is first and foremost. Secondly, you need to understand that God has created this world with creational wisdom. And being in a farming community, we know that if you take seeds of corn and you plant them in the ground in the spring or a certain season of the year, and you water the ground and you till the ground, do all the things that in the fall time you should have a harvest. That's just a creational wisdom. And if you try to do that in Antarctica, it's not going to work. That'd be foolish. And so, helping us understand that there are creational way there's wisdom to live inside of creation, and it's not just a matter of understanding creation, the physical side of creation. It's also social order. There's a third component of biblical wisdom is that there's a morality to live by. There is faith. There's virtues. There's a way that God says you can flourish if you follow His morality. And then the fourth thing is tradition. Um, Inside of biblical wisdom is valuing the past and valuing what has worked over time. Perennialism also is a big believer in absolute truth. That's a core conviction. This is again when we separate from postmodernism, that God has given us absolute truth inside of creation. He's given us absolute truth inside of His Word. We want our pilots to believe in absolute truth when it comes to the difference between 5,000 feet and 50,000 feet. We want our bankers to know to believe that there is a difference between $5,000 and $50,000. That's not all relative, and it's not. That's not just your truth or my truth. We want our doctors to believe that too. Our construction workers, our electricians, they need to know that absolute truth exists and that we're supposed to live by it. Another big component inside of perennialism is tradition. Uh, go with what has worked or in the past. Value the things that have been proven over time. Those things are going to help you to live wisely in this world. And then a sixth component is maturity, is continued to this continuing growth. One of the things I lament is to see these 26-year-old people who are living in the basement of their parents, playing video games all day because they haven't grown up, they haven't matured. And so, conviction wise, these six convictions are part of our educational philosophy, and they inform everything we do as a school. They inform everything we do as far as our curriculum, as far as the nature of a teacher, the role and nature of a student, the culture that we want to develop inside of our school, which lends itself to our value system. We have six core values that go with this. I told you my story in the very first part because I haven't gotten this far in my educational journey because I'm smart. If I walk into any room, 90% of those people are probably naturally smarter than I. What has got me this far in my educational journey is work ethic, and that's been powerful for me. That's been huge. Um, I may not be the smartest person in the room, but I'm probably going to try to do my best to outwork you. And I've taught that to my children, my family. And if you have a strong work ethic, you can overcome a ton of obstacles. We have a saying in the coaching world that hard work beats talent when talent won't work hard. And that's exactly a core value that's going to be at Litchfield Christian School is we're going to really look at things through the lens of work ethic, responsibility, understanding that you need to take individual responsibility for your own actions and your own words. Words have consequences, and you need to make sure that you understand that so that you guard your mouth and you guard your decision making. But you also need to take responsibility for your community, and because there are those around you, because we want you to be responsible for the church community and home. When you get married and you have a spouse and you have children, you're responsible for them. And so we want to create responsible people. Accountability. One of the things that the Bible teaches is that God holds us accountable, and accountability is good for us, and it's wise, and it helps us to flourish when we know that we're going to be accountable to somebody. And so we want to create a culture of accountability inside of the school. Courage, the right thing when nobody's watching, to do the right thing when nobody wants, everyone else is going against it. The courage to start something new, the courage to step out on faith, to know that God is with you, and that what's impossible for us is possible for God, and that you have the courage to step out on that. We want to have a culture of compassion, that we take care of the weak and the vulnerable, and that we always do our work, and we do our best. And then finally, with excellence, everything we do for the glory of God. And these are our six core values. So as you see, ecclesiastical perennialism, the convictions that we're going to have in the classroom inside the school, and the value system that we want to help develop inside of or the culture we want to develop inside the school system, lends itself right to our values. And so From our philosophy, we have six convictions that are going to affect how we teach. For instance, if you're going to look inside of our curriculum, you're going to see that we value reading heavily. So we are a phonics. We're going to use phonics as a method to teach reading. And once our kids know how to read, they're going to read really good works, old works, everything from Adam's Road to King Arthur to Huck Finn, to Lord of the Flies, things like these older works that have stood the test of time, that will have developed complex plot lines and character development. They're going to learn some things from Greek mythology and Roman culture, just to understand the nature of man, and the origins of our society and some of the things that we pulled from. We believe in some of the subject like language is a big deal. Uh, Learning, I would love at some point inside of our school to be able to teach the kids Latin. Latin has influenced so much science and math and has been a big part of our world. Or to even to learn Greek, it's been a big part of that. So you learn these things, and I know some of you may be like, "Well, why in the world do you need to learn Latin and Greek?" But one, learning a language like that teaches your brain to think differently, to be a little more critical, analytical. It also lends itself to medical and math and some other subjects. We want to utilize methodologies like rote learning, which is not a bad word, by the way. It seems like talk to progressive teachers, like this idea of just rote memory is such a I don't know, like a naughty way of learning. Even though I think it's absolutely vital that drilling and repetition and rote help the scaffolding process, and knowing that we're going to be plugging information in and understanding it's going to be coming. So these are just, we're talking about perennial ideas and methods that are coming with our core values and our convictions. So when you walk into a class at Litchfield Christian School, you should be able to walk in and see that your teacher is going to be the authoritative guide who is there, not the facilitator, the authoritative guide. So what we believe about the role of the teacher is that they're the expert authority, who commands the attention of the students, while at the same time they're kind of a multifaceted guide who uses their knowledge and experience to direct the learner toward wisdom, right? And that means that this educator, they derive their authority and their knowledge of biblical wisdom and their ability to communicate that wisdom effectively. And so we want our teachers to be the wise sage in the classroom that is pouring out wisdom to the students. And they can't just be authoritative. They do have to be guides. They do have to be able to come there and promote active learning. They have to be alongside the students and help them walk in the way of wisdom, which is a discipleship model that the church has been teaching for a long time. They've also got to live exemplary lives. They've got to show genuine piety and faithfulness. They've got to be the not only teaching virtues and communicating virtues, but they've got to be exhibiting those virtues. And they've got to be able to show their students what it looks like. What we expect from our students is they're going to be humble receivers. Humble is the key word. They're not the center of attention. They're not the center of the school, and what they're interested in is not the center of what's going to be taking place inside that classroom. You create a bunch of little narcissists when you have a classroom full of me-centered children, right? So they have to come in, and we have to teach them to be humble receivers of wisdom who respond and value the wisdom so that they integrate it into their life. And so they've got to be a receiver. They got to respond to the wisdom that's been given to, and they've got to learn to integrate that wisdom into their life. Your curriculum, as I've already said, you're going to be seeing it's going to be generated by a faith-based curriculum. It's going to be generated with the idea of teaching how to reason and how to discern. It's going to be robust enough that the child who really wants to take it to the next level will have that opportunity. But at the same time, we also understand that students coming to us are going to have some gaps to fill, and so those students are going to need to work at a pace and a rate that supports their learning. And so we don't want to be unmindful of these students who come to us with learning disabilities, with autism or certain learning needs or behavioral needs. We're not going to be so rigorous and so robust that they can't excel. I think our philosophy is able to encompass them and bring them into the fold, and our culture is going to be there to let them and help them. We're going to use strategies inside the classroom that I think will help the teacher manage well. Something we call temperament based or grace temperament based classroom management. Um, how we handle conflict is going to be nuanced with biblical counseling, and how we try to inspire the child and grab the heart of the child, to help integrate faith and virtue into their character. That over time they develop good character habits and good virtues that help reduce the amount of conflict and foolishness inside the classroom. All of that comes through our philosophy of education and what we believe about education. This is why it's important. So, as I wrap up here, uh, philosophy matters. Your educational philosophy matters. If you've got a poor philosophy or a weak philosophy, it's going to lead to a bad methodology, which is going to lead to an unhealthy culture. And I think postmodernism, progressive theory, and reconstructionism inside of the public education system is not working. It's not creating the right culture that's safe for the kids or good for the kids or for the teachers for that matter. The methodology is not working. The kids are not able to perform at the level they need to perform. And it all stems from this idea that you've taken away authority, you've taken away objective truth, and you're trying to reconstruct it on your own. I believe that ecclesiastical perennialism as a philosophy has got more foundation to it. It's been proven over time. Its six principles lend itself well to creating a good methodology where the children can learn and will learn, and that our six convictions with our six values will create a culture where our children will be able to be healthy and will be able to focus on the 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 learning process, and not be so caught up in other things like these social issues that are distracting them from learning to read and do math and do the things that are necessary to be successful. I think learning wisdom, the right way to live and flourish, is going to be vital to their growth. And I think when they graduate high school from us, that whether they choose to go to trade school or they go to college, it's going to be a choice that they have, and that they'll be successful in whatever they choose to do. And they're not going to be cornered into a place where they have to do. And so I think that's where we're heading as a school. And if that is something that you can be a part of or something you desire to be a part of, I would love for you to just reach out to us and connect with us and help us to connect with you so that um, uh, you can join us and partner with us, because that's going to be the key component too. I think that's happening with the poor philosophy and methodology and culture is there's been a disconnect with parents and the school system, and that's really unfortunate. Because I know for the longest time that the schools are like, "Hey, we got to get parents more involved," and now you're starting to see more and more schools try to disconnect parents, and you see it by some of the laws being passed where kids can come to school and identify where they want to, and you don't have to notify the parent of anything. I think that is that key thing. Um, I want to create a place at Litchfield Christian School where we thrive under parent involvement, that we have a framework where parents are not only volunteering, but they're participating and they're speaking into the educational process and the life. That's part of the school system. And we do have a framework, and we could talk about that on another episode. Um, here's a great place to stop. If you have any question, leave something in the comments. Help us to. I'll try to answer them as best I can, and I look forward to talking to you guys again another episode.